Welcome, everybody, to our first live event of 2026. I can't believe we had 1 year of these already. That's crazy. We're just always trying to improve these moments that we get to spend with you. They're short and they only come around once a month, but we hope that what we do here adds some value. So, that being said, we're really going to talk mainly with Matt today. As many of you know, we dropped Matt's third saddle course in the platform in December. And we thought it would be a really great opportunity for some of you that have had had a chance to get into the course and to hopefully get through some of that, to be able to talk with Matt and ask him your questions and maybe even show him progress on what you're doing. Talk about things that maybe you're still just trying to work through. And Matt can give us some good tips on that as well. Then we've got plenty of other really knowledgeable leather workers on here, and even saddle makers. Dusty, for example, is a tree maker and a saddle maker. Mark has done plenty of things in the leather industry, and Angie, Sierra, my goodness, there's many of you. Zach, there's so many of you. So I'm excited for this conversation, but I'm going to let Matt kind of do some introductions on his own and talk a little bit about the course, and then start asking questions. That's what we really want this to be, because we're hoping that this becomes, a really great conversation between everybody, and we just answer questions and give some good tips. So take it away, Matt.
Yeah. So, the inspiration on this saddle was basically I wanted to do what I would classify as a ranch roper. And, it's all over the board what a ranch roper is, but this is my take on a ranch roper. Basically, it's on the same tree as any other rope saddle you make. But I put a little more rise in the front of the seat than your regular roper. And, possibly most of the time a different rigging. This one we did an inskirt with. A lot of times we do a plate rigging, and that's really the only difference from a roper to a regular ranch roper, if you want to call it in them terms with me. Again, every one that I get to build, especially nowadays, I love to start with paper. And in this course, I drew it out, kind of my inspiration here. Derek's sharing it there, of what I wanted this to kind of come together and look like. And then we went through and we cardboard patterned everything as we go. And I still do that today. I'm working on another one on one of Dusty's trees that's a Llewellyn. And I've even went to the extreme. I've drew the floral pattern and taped the patterns to the cardboard pattern, so I can stand back and visually see what it's going to look like. I think that's so important, because I think if we can have that visual on paper, it may save us in the long run of maybe having to redo a piece because we don't like the shape, or it doesn't line up with your lines or things like that. But so that's kind of what I wanted to teach in this course. Well, that's what I want to teach in every course. It's, the patterns are available there, but I think it's important for the craftsman to learn how to pattern their own design and their own saddle. And so I try really hard to do that at every course, at every level, so that you got that to go back and design your own deal. Again, I'm happy if you use the patterns to get yourself going, but I do think it's so important, whether it's floral or saddle design or skirt shape, seat shape, all that stuff, you learn how to kind of do your own deal. So that's kind of what I brought to the table here. This saddle turned out nice. I've ridden it. It's a comfortable saddle. Of course, it was an easy ground seat. Dusty does a really good job with them strainers and stuff, so it's really easy to get a really nice ground seat in them. And because he understands, what needs to go on top of that. So I appreciate that as well. and it's just a really nice tree. So there are things about it. I'll quickly say one thing that happened as it dried is on the on side right there at my cantilever, it kind of separated. Um, and sometimes leather just has a way of maybe shrinking up a little bit, and it wasn't as tight a couple months later to the cantle binding as it was when I first finished the saddle. So those are the kind of things that I like to watch for and try to figure out why it may have happened. Maybe I didn't compress it enough or get it down in there enough or leave it strapped down long enough. Those kind of things that could happen after time goes on. And then the other thing is there were some wrinkles in the back of the swell cover that really started showing up during oiling. And so again, it's just another lesson that you learn, and you try to watch for a lot of those things you don't see until you get oiling it, and sometimes all the way to antiquing, right? So making sure we're splitting them wrinkles in the right places in the right way, and really looking at it almost with a set of glasses, and finding those things as you're going rather than find out later that, oh crap, so there was a couple things that definitely I would improve on the build later, and most of it's usually cosmetics that I see. I really like the way the shape turned out, the lines turned out, all that kind of stuff that I was after turned out. But that's a nutshell of this saddle.
Cool. It looks like we've got a few other people on here, but as I was refreshing my memory on what this course is, because we filmed these fairly far in advance. So I was looking through that, and I remembered your saddle planning module, and you kind of touched on that, Matt, because you do a really good job at teaching the students how to really plan out your saddle. That is like what Matt was talking about, sketching it out, drawing the skirts, visualizing, do I want this a little more round? Do I want it a little more square? Do I want it really square? What is the function? How is the rider going? What is the rider doing in this saddle so that we can make sure that we're, when we're thinking about how to put this together and how to design, how it's going to function as well. Not just so it's visually pleasing, because that is also important, but there's so many good things in that module. I really love the saddle planning guide. I don't know if any of you guys have seen the saddle planning guide, but I mean, it really just kind of touches on those, I don't know, top 10, 9 things that you should consider, like what's your rider and horse needs? What's the seat and the style? What's the seat size? What type of discipline are you building? What are they doing in it? What's the skirt design? How about fenders? Let's talk about that, and think about that. Jockeys, are we going to tool it? Are we just going to tool bits and pieces, or is it going to be a full-fledged, fully tooled saddle? What's going on with the horn and the swell? Because those are all different depending on what you're doing. And so making sure that you're thinking about balance and flow, and then really doing that front end work before you start cutting leather, because that's where you can kind of work out the details and maybe the future mistakes before wasting hundreds of dollars worth of materials. But anyways, I would love to hear or see, maybe even by raise of hands, who is building saddles right now. Anyone? Dusty, I can see. Greg is kind of trying to build a saddle. Okay, Sebastian, how about you? Are you building saddles right now? Yeah, thumbs up. Cool. Zach, I know you're building saddles. Zach builds lots of saddles. Mark, JJ, how about you guys? Are you guys building saddles right now?
I'm actually starting. Sorry, I just figured out how to unmute this thing.
No worries. I know. Tell
My
me
God,
about it.
I found the button and then it went away and I didn't realize you tapped the top of the screen to get it to come back up. But I just found the unmute button. But yeah, I'm starting. I did have you know, I'm in. Of course, y'all can probably tell by how I'm talking, but I'm in Southeast Texas, and there's gators and stuff a lot over here, and a lot of people use gator skin inlays and stuff like that, and when they come from the tanneries and such, they come dyed, and I was just kind of curious also, like if you were to inlay that, like in the seat you see in some of these saddles and stuff, does that? I mean, when the dye, is it common for that to bleed off into your clothes for a while, or I mean, is that something that people worry about, or is that an issue, or?
Well, where we source our gators from, no, I've never had that happen at all. Uh, and I've done quite a few, from American alligator to Nile down to just Cayman, and we put a lot of Cayman seats in our barrel saddles. I've never seen the dye come out of any of the gator stuff.
Yeah, I was just kind of curious because the gentleman I got him from, I mean, he's licensed and all that, but the guy I'd gotten him from, he had mentioned, man, you may want to you know, wear some old blue jeans the first couple rides, just in case, So I'm not real sure, and I haven't done a gator skin inlay yet, but I do have a couple hides here.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe the way he's tanning them, maybe he's the expert on what his skins will do. But we've used a lot of them. I've never seen any of that dye come out. In fact, I've seen a lot of saddles 4 or 5 years later that look the same as when we put them in. Like, didn't even, like, it doesn't even really get dull or lose color or any of that. So
And who doesn't love some gator in a saddle?
Yeah, Misty, I give you the shake a little bit because I've been doing more repairs than anything, and they've got me kind of swamped before I can really start doing the ones. But I did get the prints. I sent them off to a friend of mine that owns a printing company and printed on some heavy paper. So I'm gonna use two versions. I'm gonna use the print and try to pattern both. I got two trees now to build on that are the exact same, only one's a 15 and a half and the other's a 17. One of the one of the cool things I seen, Matt, when I was looking at your video, is how you made changes to your fenders. What was it, three different times till you got exactly what you wanted? And I appreciated that, knowing, yeah, well, you're gonna change all the time. You just take the change and change it when it needs to get it the way you want. And I truly appreciated that, as among everything else, like when we visited here last month, that you are a fantastic instructor, and that's my job, is to evaluate instructors at teaching college, and you do a fantastic job, and I truly appreciate it.
Like, I appreciate that, Greg, and yeah, it was good visiting with you a month ago. And you mentioned two things that I just want to mention. That is probably the one thing that took the longest to learn is the fender needs to complement the skirt, and the skirt needs to complement the jockey, and the seat jockey needs to complement the skirt. All that comes together as one by the time you're done. And if one doesn't complement the other, it may not be noticeable to our client, but as a maker artisan, it is something that we may not even see, but something's just throwing your eye off, and it's the same with floral patterns and flow and all that kind of stuff. So it is important to stand back as far away as you can. That's when you're going to see the most. And so that's important. But I hear you mention the repair side of things. And me and Ross Brunk had a good conversation the other day, because he's inundated with a lot of repairs as well. But I'm telling you what, that's where I started in this deal, and that's where I started understanding the art of a saddle, and I give kudos to the repairs I've done over the years of what they've taught me, whether it was what not to do or what I can do. And I'm telling you, it's not a bad thing. And charge what you're worth, man. Like, do those repairs, because it's such good practice and it's such good insight of what is inside those saddles. And people need them done. I mean, I know people that are just doing that for a living. So there's a lot of work out there. And I think it's important for me to mention that that's part of the reason of where I'm at today, was because I had the opportunity with Burns to do that. And I appreciated every ounce of it. So.
Yeah, I had a friend of mine tell me, he goes, you should repair for 2 years before you ever try to build one. And I have learned a lot just by doing that. I got one that I did a welded swell cover and got it done. And boy, I tell you what, a lot of learning on that one too. And then I turned around and the guy's brother brought me one he just needed a clean and probably a cap and wrap on it. And I looked at him and I says, it's got a bigger hole in the, wear than your brother's did. And he goes, okay, do me one there. And it's like, okay, so I'm going to do back to back, swell covers. So it's always learning and something different. And a lot of these things, you look at some of these saddles and go, especially after I've seen yours, look at them and say, how do these guys even build these things? It's like, it's just insane. Some of the things that I've repaired, one that had 19 nails through each, through the sheepskin right into the tree, and nails bent over and rubbing against a horse. And it's like, holy heck.
Ooh.
It's a wonder what we see. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Anybody else got any good questions for me? Comments?
I had one coming to me, Matt. I'm not sure if he made it on or not, but he was asking about the tree that you used in the roper saddle.
Okay, what does he want to know? So that tree that I did in the regular roper was made by Lewis out of Texas. We've built quite a few of them here at the shop through Burns there, and the team ropers really like the fit of those trees. And I happen to have one, so it's actually a funny story. I built that and decided to keep it for myself, and then my friend Matt Twitchell, he's a pickup man, and ended up taking it and selling it out from underneath me. So now I had to build another one on this dusty tree, and I'm sure the same thing will happen there. But yeah, it's a Lewis tree. It's a fiberglass. It's got a built-in strainer as well. Fiberglass tree.
I think one thing that is really, really important for especially new saddle makers, and I don't know if any of you are brand new, but I think one thing that could probably get you in some trouble is not knowing where to cut each piece and part of a saddle out of a hide, because it actually really, really matters, because some parts of the hide are not going to age or ride well if you cut them out of the wrong part or the wrong part of the hide. So I know, Matt, we've done plenty of things on this before, but maybe go into that a little bit. Why is it important to cut the fenders out of this location, and the reasoning behind it, because there really is a reason.
Yeah. Well, the sad truth is if I could cut every part out of the back and the butt, I would, other than your swell covers and the bottom of your horns and things that need to be a little bit cheesy in order to be able to collect and mold and compress. But I've always tried to explain it this way. A cow doesn't really grow up as much as he grows out. So they get longer over time. So I personally think that the stretch of the hide actually does this over the life of the cow. So like a fender, you know that we're going to be putting the pressure down on the fender. So I want to run the fender long ways towards the butt, or at least the middle of the hide towards the back, to get my fenders. And it's the exact weird opposite way in my mind when you do the rigging. I want the rigging facing that same direction. So some of that stretch over that time, over the time that cow grew, some of that stretch is already gone. But it is like your riggings. I take my seat out of the butt. I take my riggings out of the butt. And a lot of times, if the hide's really good, I'll take my fenders next to my riggings, at least the top side of my riggings. Like if it's a plate rigging and I'm going to line it, I may get up towards the middle of the hide a little bit towards the belly and use that liner for the back side of the riggings if I'm doing a plate rigging. On an in skirt, I like a really good leather for the inside of my skirt too. And I think the reason for that is if both the top and the bottom are out of good leather, it just strengthens that in skirt. And I will say, like, you know, when you take your swell cover, the swell cover can be up in the belly. Watch for them ugly wrinkles and stuff that could show up later. But I think you need that for there. You know, your ground seat needs to come out of the neck, mainly because it's thicker up there and it skives way easier than any other part of the hide. So yeah. it gets you skiving. Now, some of them you'll get that rawhide. And if you get into the rawhide and you let it case, that rawhide it'll skive just as easy as anything. But if you don't let it case and you hit that rawhide, it'll stop your knife and break your blade or whatever it'll do. So watch that. I would definitely case up your ground seats. That's just a piece of advice there, because if you don't and you're into that rawhide that sometimes comes in the middle of that neck, man, it can be a bear and you're wondering what the heck is going on. But yeah, just picture which way every stretch is going to go and run that the way the length of the hide. Take anywhere that's going to wear out the most, get as close to the butt and the back as you can. And if you use that rule of thumb, you'll be all right. And the sad truth is I hate to say this, but our hides have gotten smaller since I've started, and it can be really difficult to get your stirrup leathers and all the stuff out of there. So a lot of times we might have to raise our price and have one hide that we get 2, maybe 3 sets of stirrup leathers out of, and it just got to charge a little bit more for that, because it is tough on some hides. I don't care if it's Wickett Craig or if it's Herman Oak. They're just getting smaller, and we got to deal with that. But yeah, that's kind of my 2 cents on where to cut with. And I know that we did that in Shop Talk for sure. I can't remember what year we did it, but we did it in Shop Talk and showed how I would lay out a hide.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we've got it on Illume. Derek, can you recall, did we ever do that on Illume? Is there a snapshot of that?
Oh yeah, no, we talked about it I think we've talked about it in all the classes. I know at length in the first saddle.
Okay,
where you took it from, and you talked about the stretch in the cow, and no, that's all in there.
It is.
Matt,
I know.
I do have.
Yeah, go ahead.
Have one question, if you could, is if you could, I don't know, lay it out on a hide with your pieces laid there and marked or a template that we could actually look at.
I have that
as a print.
I'm gonna find it, because that's what Matt's talking about. We did in the magazine back when it was Shop Talk, when we first acquired it. That was one of our skill demos, and we had a hide, and we had Matt lay out all of those pieces and parts on a hide.
Yeah, that's another thing to mention. If at all possible, you can get a left and a right.
Yep.
You can mirror what you're doing. You know, you can get a rigging out of this one and a rigging out of this one and a fender out of this one and a fender out of this one and make it work. And even if they're not a left and a right, you can kind of look at it that way too. A lot of times I'll do that and get a piece out of each side. So there's lots of ways to skin it. But like I said, the rule of thumb, anything that's going to wear out the most, like your seat, your fenders, your riggings, take it out of the butt and the back as close as you can get, and run them the right direction for stretch. Dusty, what's your take on that? You know, he's been building saddles as long as I have. Would you agree with me on that one, Dusty?
Yeah, I used to do that, and then I spent a lot of time with Chuck, and he showed me a different way. And so we take our stirrup leathers lengthwise anyhow, and the way that he lays out a hide made super good sense to me. So he'll actually take the seat out of the butt on one, and then he'll take the fenders out of the butt on the second hide, but he runs them back to front. And then he gets his jockeys out of that little hole, you know, where your bend is in your fender. And I started doing that, and it just made more sense to me because I was utilizing the hide more and more. And I haven't found a huge amount of stretch difference in them personally, but that's just a personal thing for me. I do tell everybody that they shouldn't be riding in their stirrups, you know, like all the time. Your weight should be balanced in your seat, and your stirrups are there just kind of to have balance off of, but not pushing constantly in. I know there's different disciplines that do that. Cutters really ride short stirrups, you know, Rainers not so much, but you know, those different disciplines do different things. So we need to take into effect that. But that's just how I've been doing it lately, just to utilize the hides more is all. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know if everyone knows Chuck Storms, but if he's talking about it, it's trustworthy. He's been doing this for 40 something years, and one hell of a saddle maker. So yeah, I mean, I would gospel that as a good way to do it if he says so.
If I can share some pictures on here, I will, on how I lay one out.
Yeah, you can drop those right in the chat, Dusty.
Right on.
And if you guys look there, I'm dropping a couple things right now. In the first saddle course, there is a map, and you'll see the hide laid out and each piece laid out on it. That's what that second picture is. But no, I'm digging what you're talking about, Dusty. I'm interested to see what you got.
Right, I'll drop them in here. Going back, I would say Matt was talking about looking at your saddles at distance. I agree 100% at all different angles. And one thing I do is I take a picture of them, because a snapshot doesn't move. And I'll find that if I take a picture and I go back in and I'm just like studying the picture, I find the flaws that I'm in it, rather than I'm skimming over them with my eye a little bit. Like, it's more refined that way. So I tend to always take a picture of something and then look at it about 15 minutes after I've done that. And then I get a better idea of like, oh, what did I do here? You know, where before I was just kind of like looking at it, twisting it, turning it, doing things like that. But that's just a personal thing. So
that's exactly good point, Dusty. I've done that exact thing, especially with the floral pattern and stuff. But your lines do, because you're exactly right. They don't move. And I've cheated, guys, and this is another trick to the trade. Take your saddle once you've got your cardboard on there and just go throw it on your horse, see what it looks like. Because I mean, our stands don't match the back of a horse very well, and I've learned to know where to set it on my stand so that it mimics what it's going to do on the horse. And a lot of times the mistake we make is we let the front be higher than it really is going to be on the horse. If you look on most horses, your saddle front's actually tipping more down. So if you're trying to level the bottom of a square skirt with this, just a level stand, and you're just setting that on a level stand, more than likely on your horse, it's going to want to, towards the withers, your bottom line's going to want to drop down and not look level on the horse. Now with your kidney beans and things like that, it's not as important, but like a square skirt, that is something to think about, because them fronts really sit down. So when I find, let's say, center of my bar, I learned this, I think it was from, oh shoot, I'm going to forget, Pete Gorell years ago. And what he does to find that center of the bar, you know, where center of rigging would be, full, I guess, if you will, full rigging, is he sets a flat 2x4 under the back of the bar and then lets the front hit the table. And wherever the point of contact or the bottom radius of your bar, that's where full position would be. And then I just use this rule of thumb, always have. Some may disagree with it, but my 7/8 position is always 3/4 of an inch behind that, and that's where I put it. And that's just how I've always done it. And that way I don't have to worry about from there to the length of my seat or anything like that. I've just always done it there, and it seems to have worked all these years for me. But that's how I find it. So set your 2x4 flat, like flat, not on its edge, underneath the very back of the bar, and then let the bar hit the bench or the table, and run yourself a center line, and that's where you're going to find full, in my opinion.
Interesting.
We were doing some saddle stuff, and when you put your paper patterns on, or your cardboard patterns too, they will stick out. They won't mold like they will after they're on a horse. And so it's good to pull those down, maybe even weight it a little bit so it takes the shape of what it's actually going to be on the horse, because that will change how that angle is, especially on a square skirt. It'll be higher, and then it'll actually look like it curves down in the back some when you pull it down. So
okay, so I'm glad you mentioned that, because that reminded me of something else. You guys, you'll notice on my inskirts I start with my top pattern, and that's my final pattern. I bring the bottom to it. Now, if you're going to do a regular skirt and you try to do that and you don't leave it big, by the time you block that in, a lot of times it'll start pulling that leather up or down or doing this. So if you have a level line across there and then you go in and you expect to block it, it could start making it arch in weird ways. So I like to cut that, my regular skirt, larger, block it, then find my lines, because it can change while you're blocking them skirts, especially if you block them like I teach. I like a really, really heavy block. I block them till the bottom of that skirt is almost level with the top of the tree. And I think that's important. And then your fillers take the place and make that balance underneath. You know, there's a lot of misinformation about blocking. Like they say you should be able to fill that block. Well, in reality, what the block is to do is to add your fillers below and reposition that so the weight of the bars can distribute out through the skirt too and help that horse's back. You don't really want in best case scenario is you couldn't find that block. If you blocked it correctly and put fillers in correctly, you wouldn't be able to find that block, because we want to distribute the weight across the skirt too. So that's my 2 cents there. So be careful with what you're watching in my courses. If it's an in skirt, I do things a little bit backwards from a regular skirt. So if you're going to do a regular skirt, leave it wild, block it in, find your lines, do all that after it's blocked in, and then you're golden. So thanks for reminding me, Mark, to bring that up.
Yeah, I agree. You can use a spray bottle and spray, like, mist that paper board, and you can get some forming going on there too, is a trick. Just spray it lightly and you can kind of get it to form what you need it to do.
Good idea. Yeah, I felt kind of dumb about that. I was trying to actually pattern a saddle pad to match our skirts at the Burns. And I'm like, I can't get that freaking cardboard to get where I want it so I could send it to the gal to pattern my pad the way I want it, but he's like, yeah, just wet it up and it works really well. Like I was able to get the swoop in the pad and everything, and it really works well with the cardboard that they wrap your leather in. Yeah. It's awesome. So yeah, that's a good little trick of the trade there Dusty shared with me. So thanks for sharing that with everybody.
Yeah, you bet. I did drop those pictures in the chat too, so have a look. And I know that it's kind of confusing because there's a square skirt and a round skirt, square jockey, round, but you'll get the idea. Those are pairs of like how I do things. So the skirts will be next to each other. But yeah.
I just had one thing to add to the 2x4 idea. when I found out when I did the 2x4 to find where my rigging goes, I like to use my cantle corners as reference points where to put the 2x4 because I've pushed it too far forward and been off on my rigging sets before.
Yeah, good point, Zach. That's exactly what I do as well. Is I put the very front edge of that 2x4 right there where my cantle corners are, and then just that's how I stay consistent, because you got to find that spot, that sweet spot that you like, and you're going to be within so close that I guarantee you the horse ain't going to notice. You know what I mean? So I mean, we're talking not much change. Unless we're way too far back and it drops the back way down, or like you said, too far forward and tipping it too far up.
And also, like when you started talking and they had the picture, Derek had that picture up there. That's something that you should do with every project, not just
absolutely
the saddle. I do it. My students here at the shop have to draw out exactly what it is they envision themselves building, and that's a step that I think a lot of us don't do. We've got it in our head, we know what we're doing, where it's all right here, and when you put it on paper and you start building and it doesn't look like the paper, we already know we're screwing up or we're going a different direction, and we need to make those adjustments. And it really helps you to visualize what you're seeing, and it goes back to drawing the pattern and hanging it on the wall across the shop and looking at it for maybe 3 days and going over and making those adjustments. Those are all things that we get we get like tunnel vision, that we're drawing the pattern or whatever, we're right there in front, and the next thing you know, it doesn't look good, but we go ahead and put it on the project because we don't know it until after it's on the project. And then we're like, I wished I'd have changed that. Well, if you take a little of that time to draw that out, look it over, and visualize it before from a 30,000 view, as opposed to right in the thick of it, it really shows where your lines are off, or where maybe you've lost some flow or whatever. And I think that's one thing that is very important to do at the beginning of any project.
Yeah, I would agree. Right. That's a very good point with anything that we're creating from our mindset. I'm fortunate enough too. I got a text group that I text, and they're masters at the trade, especially when it comes to saddles and tooling. And if I'm not afraid to critique, or hey, that looks stupid, or hey, that's way off, and I'll just send it to that group. And man, sometimes I get some of the best feedback. It's like, oh yeah, I hadn't thought of that. I should look at that a little different. And just bouncing ideas off of one another is such a good thing, because it is someone else's different perspective, and you don't have to take their advice, but sometimes it's like really good advice, and it's like, oh yeah, I never thought of it that way. I'm going to go back and change that. And because, I mean, what are we in this for, guys? We're in this together, and the more we can help each other, the stronger the industry is going to get, in my opinion.
Right. Yep. I also think that once you refine your craft, 1/8 of an inch makes a huge difference, even though you might not think of it, but one little line difference on your skirt lines or your jockey lines sets it to another level. So yeah, you're right, Mark. Just sit there and look at it for a long time. There's no rush to get it out. So, well, hopefully not, I guess. A lot of the times there is, but take your time and don't.
We're always under pressure.
Right.
We're always under pressure to get it done because we procrastinate some. But
yeah.
Still,
yeah.
Still that time, to me, and I tell my students this all the time, that little bit of time that you take to look that over sets you apart from all the others that are not looking at it. And that's our goal as makers and craftsmen and artisans, is to make everything a little better that we do each time. And the easiest way to do that is take a little time to examine what you've got going.
100% agree.
Yep.
We agree. Ask any of these people who have been into the studio before how annoying Derek and Rachel and I are with the front end prep. The more, the more we can have outlined in detail, man, the better things go in studio. It just happens.
Well,
yeah, I want to talk about.
We're diligent.
I'm annoying.
Diligent.
Well, and here's the other thing. So when I started this journey, and you know, in Salina, we had, you know, the guys that helped me along the way and taught, but I didn't really have any place to take the stuff. So that's a lot of the reasons why I started going to Sheridan and those other places to get critiques, just to get a different perspective. But I just remember one thing, I think I point this out in the Ranch Roper course. I remember going there for the first probably 7 or 8 years, thinking I had it. And I'd get there and I'd look at mine compared to others that's been in the industry for 20 years and wonder, how did they get so dang clean? And like, it just, the color was just different and everything about it. And I just kind of get disappointed. But I mentioned this, like, wholeheartedly, like, we got to treat it like it's something that's soft. You know, we don't want to wear rings. You want to watch the buttons on your shirt. You want to handle it with care as you're doing it too, because a lot of times you can just get rough, and some of that stuff doesn't show up till later. I'm telling you, I've seen it time and time again. It's like, dang it, there's a picture of my snap right there in the middle of that seat, you know, and it wasn't there until I oiled it or whatever. So just like that extra care and finesse, you know, I still get after the guys at the shop when I see them edging and burnishing a seat on their whiteboard that they've got a million cuts in, and it's like, them cuts are going to show in that seat. Don't edge and burnish your seat there. We got all these rock slabs and stuff that are smooth. Go there. It's going to make your work look better, I promise. And it's just those little tiny tricks that you can help keep your leather looking clean throughout the process, especially when it's wet. When it's wet, it wants to mold to whatever you set it on. Like, it just does. So there's some tips there too to do a little bit cleaner work and end up with a cleaner job at the end of the build too. So
yeah, I love it. All of this is so good. Okay, the rest of you, I'm gonna get you guys to participate. Mark, where are you from? Mark Clark. Let me clarify, because we do have a Mark Barkus.
Well, I'm from Cody, Wyoming, but
I know. How about you, Debbie? Debbie, where are you joining us from?
Belgrade, Montana.
Very good. I love that. So have you ever built a saddle?
I did. I took a class, and so I built one with the classmates, and I built one by myself.
Very cool.
I'm very new. Very, very new.
I love it. Okay, well, if you're very, very new, like, what is a question that you want to ask these guys? I mean, you've got Matt here, you've got Dusty, you've got Zach, Lexi, Sierra. I know they've all built plenty of saddles. Plenty. Anything for them.
I don't even know where to start, other than I have a lot. So recently, I had a saddle fitter look at my saddle, and now I have more questions on to make. So you measure your horse, use whatever cards you want to use, you measure your horse, and then how do you go find a tree that's going to fit your horse for, until they get old, and then they change and they're wither. So that's my biggest questions right now is, how do I find a tree that's going to fit my horse or somebody else's horse? And I have so many questions with that. I don't even know where to begin to ask.
Yeah.
That's a great question.
That's a great question. I'll chime in real quick on my thoughts, and then we actually have a tree maker here that can give us his insight. That's a difficult thing to do because not every tree maker has the same cards and stuff that are out there. And I just suggest finding the tree maker like Dusty, for example. He uses the Dennis Lane system on the cards, and hit them cards when he's done matches the shape of those bars and the angles and all of that stuff. If you tried to do that and go to another tree manufacturer and they don't use the card system, it's almost impossible to say, hey, this is what an R3 looks like. I measured my horse and it's an R3. That tree maker is probably going to be like, I don't know what to tell you. So what we've done in the past is talk to our tree maker, tell them what we're dealing with. Most tree makers are happy to look at some pictures. They want certain angles and certain ways to help you they can help you decide what the best fit is if they don't use a card system. We've done it that way in the past, so that's one way to do it. But if you're going to use a card system, you better have a tree maker that also uses the card system.
Okay, I have some of those Dennis Lane cards coming. And Dusty, you make trees?
I do. Yep.
Okay, can I have your phone number?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay.
Do you want it now? Or?
You got your pen and paper ready?
I'm ready.
All right. It's 307 679 2252.
Perfect.
Yep. And I will kind of reiterate what Matt said, is that every tree maker does things differently. Unfortunately, there's no standard, right? We all have what works for us. And you'll find whether go the production route of a tree and a custom route of a tree, we have different terminology. We can all kind of come to the same conclusion, but just beware that like there's certain things that we do in the custom side that they don't necessarily do on the production side. So just be aware of that. And yeah, you can kind of work your way through, but you could call me whenever and we could sure discuss, lots of different things, but it is hard getting a start knowing certain things, but I do think we have a course on Illume. Is it live?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Well, at some point,
Derek, I can't hear you.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
You're talking. I can see you talking to yourself.
He lost his mic.
Oh my. Also, you know what? Mark Clark had a question, and we'd love to just, throw your suppliers out there, your connections, but who makes a good mid-range wade tree for a first saddle? So I don't want to go total custom, but I want something that's going to do the job and be quality, right?
Yeah, there's Lewis, there's Bowden, there's Precision, there's Timberline, Brandon Franco. Yeah, those are kind of probably the mid-lane. Am I forgetting somebody?
I
think that's the list I would have suggested. Yeah. And like Randy at Timberline is really good to talk to. He understands the horses' backs. He's one, if you're wanting that mid-range stuff, that's really good to work with. I've worked with him a bunch.
I have his contact, so I'll drop that. I'll drop Randy at Timberline in the chat.
I got my last one from him, and it was a pretty nice tree.
Yeah. And he's just a good dude. I just really like him too.
Okay, and I've got a different mic on now, but I was just going to say, coming soon on the tree building course. Dusty came and I got to torment him for a couple days, and it was really good. So
Well,
you stay tuned on that.
yeah, and I'm really excited to see that because I've worked with Dusty and watched him actually put together a tree and cut out the parts, and he knows his stuff. So watch for that. I think you'll get some insight there. Um, and as far as fit goes, again, you know, if you have the tree already and you know what horse you're going to put it on. Go put it on there. Set it just back of the scapula, and the point of the what you really want is A, the gullet doesn't hit anywhere on top of the spine, and B, the more bar that touches that horse's back, the better off we are, right? Because that's the point. We want to get as much bar on the horse's back as possible. So that would help you if you're going to like go fit a horse with something you already have. And I would, Dusty just gave you an open invitation. If you have one that you have a question about, he'll probably know a little bit about them and can help you with that as well. But yeah, my vote is talk to these guys that's built these trees forever. Dusty mentioned a few. There is the mid-range ones, and then there's the custom side, which is what Dusty does. So yeah, hope that helps you.
Yep. And then after you fit it bare, put a pad underneath it and see how much it changes, because you'll be shocked on how that changes things. And then you got to remember that we're going to put shearling and leather and stuff. So like there's lots of things, but Matt is right. You want the most contact as you can on that horse. And so, yeah.
Is that when the horse is just standing there, or when the horse is loaded and in motion?
Boy, Mark, you brought up a great conversation.
Yeah. Let's go down that road.
Unfortunately, we put a saddle tree on a very static horse that's standing square. Everything's perfect. And then we asked the horse to go forward, backwards, sideways.
And put a mark in his back.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. But if they could only talk, that'd be nice. But yeah, I tell everybody that if Mark and I changed shoes, our boots probably wouldn't interchange, right? My foot wouldn't fit in his and his wouldn't fit in mine. But we want the saddle that we build or the saddle that we ride to fit every single horse we ever put it on. And unfortunately, all these horses are different. So as long as you keep the same body type, you'll be okay. But don't go from a thoroughbred to a halflinger, because it won't happen.
Yeah.
Solid advice. Yeah.
Do you guys have a preference in the thickness of your saddle pad, or does that just depend on the saddle and the horse?
Well, yeah, that is a great question. You know, a lot of people make the mistake thinking they need to pad up when they actually need to pad down.
Correct.
And that's important to think about. You know, if a saddle's giving the horse pressure, and we say, okay, we need to pad up, it's going to create more pressure. So we have to really be careful with that. But sometimes the saddle just doesn't fit, period. And there's nothing you can do. A really good fitting saddle, I'll be honest, I like a 7/8 pad. I mean, if I know that saddle fits, that's just my go-to is a 7/8 pad. And that's all I ride with. So that's my 2 cents on the pad deal.
Yeah. And it really depends on the condition of the horse, whether it's a fat springtime or you've been riding them all summer and they're pulled down and whatnot. Your pads need to be, you can't just sit there and go, this pad's the one. You're going to have to maybe in the spring be using just a blanket, because they're going to be roly-poly, fatty until that pulls down. And then if you're riding them every day hard, by the end of the fall, cow work gets done, you might be riding them in that 7/8 and the wool pad blanket, just depending on how they develop and their age of the horse. There's a million questions right there, or a million answers for one question.
Yeah. Good point. Sebastian, your hand is up. Go ahead.
Thanks. Hey guys, just had a question too that kind of my wife wanted to ask a little bit, and we go down rabbit holes a lot. And for like a shorter backed horse, you know, and everyone looks at them differently, And you guys are talking about when you get really into the detail work, you know, like an eighth of an inch, a quarter inch. Would a round skirt versus a square skirt on those horses make a big difference? What's your guys' experience with that?
Great question.
Great question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm this guy. I would tend to go as short as I could with the skirt. However, it shouldn't really matter if you're putting the skirt in correctly. Those bars do this like this. And if we keep that skirt doing that, that's exactly what the horse's back is doing. Now, if we come out and we start leveling off or whatever out the back of the skirt and we set it on a short backed horse, it's going to tend to want to rub the rump, right? But if we keep it going with the angle of the bar that we'll use Dusty, he created that angle for a reason, because the horse's back gradually keeps climbing out the front of the saddle and the back of the saddle. So we got to make sure that our skirts are continuing that out the back and the front, not as much the front, but the back. And my rule of thumb is off the back of the cantle, I go 5.5 inches and I stick with it. And I just always went 5.5 inches to the back of the skirt. And if you're, like I said, if you're keeping that going in that upward direction, you shouldn't have too many issues, whether they're short backed or long backed.
Now, if you do put like a monster square skirt, old timey big thing, they look a little weird, right? But it's not going to affect the horse much, but it might swallow them, I would say. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like a show saddle. You know, some of them show saddles, they got 16-inch depth skirts, and you know they're out the back 6 inches and a bunch of silver on them and stuff. I agree with that too, Dusty.
Yeah.
Hey, Matt, one question. You're 5.5 inch out the back. The one saddle I'm building for myself is a 17-inch seat. Do you still stay with that, or are you going to shorten that up some?
A 17-inch seat, I may shorten it up some, but it also depends on how much bar you got out the back. You got to make sure that you have enough room for your block and stuff out the back point of the bars. You know what I mean? So if you start encroaching on the bar too much, then sometimes what happens is you can look under your jockey and see the tree and all that kind of stuff. So that's just something to keep in mind as you're working towards that. But if you was going to use the 5.5, do what I just told you. Keep that skirt climbing, just the same angle as that bar's doing. And honestly, it'll get right up on the rump and probably not cause you any issues in my opinion.
Okay. And I know when it was built, it was the Lewis tree that I'm using, and you know, it's the only difference that I can tell side by side with that and the 15.5 is the center of the bars where he lengthened that extra inch and a half out. So the back end looks on the front end all look the same.
Yeah, I'm sure Dusty can speak to how the rock would change, but I'm assuming that even from a 14 to a 17, the rock stays the same, wouldn't you say, Dusty?
Yeah, it should stay the same. There's things that you have to do to make it stay the same because geometry is geometry. So they should do it. Most tree makers do. So, but yeah, you have to just make some adjustments. But yeah, should be fine.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, like on a large seat, like I consider a 17 is getting into those larger seats. I personally don't want my bars of my trees to go over 24 inches because then things start happening. I think you can, but you're trying to get your skirts and everything else on there. And so I start crowding things when they become 17 inches. Like I take a little bit off the front of the bar and a little bit off the back of the bar just so I can have the seat length, but I don't have the huge long bar that would typically be in one of my like quote like a 15-inch, right? So
yeah,
I always like to have 3 inches of wood behind the cantle to the edge of the bar, but on a 17-inch, I start having to crowd that in because I have to go somewhere with the length of the seat, if that makes sense. So we're getting into the weeds, but yeah. Yeah.
I actually measured that under the bars the other day, and it's 24 inches from tip to tip.
Perfect. Yep. You're fine then.
So,
yeah.
And then when it was made, the seat measuring that tree the way it sits right now is 17 inch, so it'll probably finish out at 16 3/4. I'm
Pretty
guessing.
close. Pretty close.
Yep.
So that's what it's looking like. So I'm gonna do my son's first, so I can do the screw ups there and make mine better.
Yeah, there you go.
We won't tell.
Well, I'll tell him. What do you expect for free?
True.
Exactly.
True.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
That's
goes back to
tell my
Matt,
wife
get
that.
paid for your time.
That's right.
Yeah, it's if you're lucky. Thanks, Dad.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And then probably
Right.
tell you what you could have done different for him.
Yeah.
He already did that once on a set of buckles I put on because I didn't put Blevins. I wanted to try something different. And he goes, "Those kind of bite into my ankle." I said, "Well, let's fix it. Let's put a set of Blevins on." And I says, "We got to try things back and forth in my guinea pig." So
There you go. That's right. That's right.
I said, either way, it don't cost y'all. It costs a couple of rivets.
Right.
Yep.
Well, guys, if you've been with us before, we did decide to make these a little longer because the conversation is really, really good and really, really valuable. But I don't want to keep you for any longer. I do hope that if you have other questions, or maybe we leave here tonight and you're like, shoot, I wish I would have asked Matt that, or I wish I would have asked Dusty that, or, maybe I need to just ask the group whatever, or you had an idea or something that you do that you just remember after the fact, get in the community and just drop your nuggets. I've written some things down that I thought were really good takeaways that I'm going to share in the community as well. But just because we have to say goodbye and good night doesn't mean that the conversation has to end. I think this is really, really, really good stuff. I know I learned some things tonight, but I'm not a saddle maker, but I did learn some new things. So I appreciate the conversation, and I appreciate you all taking the time to just be here and participate. And, we do this for you. So let us know what you want to hear and what you would value, because that's why we're doing this. We want to add value to what you're doing. We want to help. We want to inspire. We want to collaborate, laugh, poke fun at. I mean, all of it, right? Let's just do that. So, anyways, we will let everybody go. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Dusty, also. Yes, go ahead.
Just a bit of housekeeping.
Yes.
Next month, so February 25th, same time, we've got Odin Clack meeting with us. Now, we are going to be talking about his bag class that came out, but I'd love to keep some of the same people coming. And so, if you have questions about marketing, I'm sure we could sneak some things in with him. But I did want to make y'all aware of that. I have dropped some images into the chat on the live events hub. And I will also drop this chat thread in there as well. We do repost this video. So if you want to go back and watch a certain part or need to remember something, that is also there shortly after we wrap up here. So sorry, just wanted to get that housekeeping taken care of.
Yeah, no, that's great, Derek. Thank you for that. That's super, super great. And like I said, just let us know. Let us know what you want this to be, because it's about you. It's not about us. Sometimes you think you have really good ideas and the people that you think will appreciate it just don't. Yeah, we don't want to do that. We really want this to be valuable for you, because it is an investment of time, and time is our most valuable commodity, especially in the evening. If you like, this is family time. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you, everybody, for participating in the conversation. Thank you for being a part of the Illume family. We love that. And we're just going to continue to do really cool things. So super excited for 2026. And we will see you all next month. Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Hey,
Bye.
Matt. Hey, Matt, this is Greg real quick. Did you ever get a chance to try them templates yet?
I haven't yet, but I just barely got started on a saddle, so
Okay, no problem. I just thought I'd ask.
I will though, and I'll get back to you.
Okay, sounds great. Have a great
All
day.
right, all right, you too. See ya.
Thanks.
Hey,
Hey,
see you,
Matt, I have a
everybody.
question for you right quick.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'm totally new to horse tack, saddle, all that stuff. I've had a couple of people local ask me to take apart saddle, to clean saddle, stuff like that. And earlier in the deal here, y'all were talking about you should learn how to do, repairs and taking apart and that kind of stuff before you even think about doing a saddle. So where do we go? Who do we talk to learn how to take apart a saddle, clean a saddle, that kind of thing?
So there's some on Illume that I've done.
Okay.
You go in there and you'll see some repair stuff that I've done. I've done a clean and oil. I've done a few of those things there. And here's the trick to repairs. A lot of repairs, like it might be the rigging's torn out or something's just ripped. Let's just put it in perspective. If a rigging was torn, I carefully take off the rigging, the original rigging, okay? And I'm going to use that as my pattern. So I'm going to unfold it, use it as my pattern, put it back together. I'm going to line up this old screw holes or nail holes and make sure I put it right back where I got it from. And so there's that. There's relines. Relines are a good money maker if you're charging enough, but make sure you're charging enough. Relines gives you the opportunity to tear the skirts off and see what they've done, things like that. But any of these courses, like if it needs a new cantle binding, you can come to my saddle course and learn how to do the binding. Or I know I've done a recover a horn on a repair saddle.
Yeah, all these
That's
things
on
he's
there.
talking about are in that repair course. We fixed what was it, Matt, 100-year-old saddle.
Yeah. So there's that's in there. And like I said, I'm not great at getting on the community. I'm going to try to do better. But a lot of times Rachel will reach out to me and say, hey, so-and-so's got a question. So feel free to get on the community and I can help you through stuff the best I can, or we can get on a phone call as well. But there is a lot of stuff in there that we've done that can help you along the way.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it.
Big thing is just
I'm like 4.5 hours from Don Gonzalez, and he's the closest one that I would trust to teach me how to do something. So,
Man, if you could get in his hind pocket, I'd do it. That guy's amazing. Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep. That guy knows his shit there.
Okay, guys, I'm going to push the button.
All right.
Good?
Thank you.
I just don't want to cut
I've just
anybody
been
off.
sitting here soaking in everything,
Have a good evening, everybody. Thanks again.